and of course you, everyone attending. We are delighted to have you participate and share in this very important discussion hosted by the Association of Law Firm Nigeria, Law Firm Administrators, is ALAN. ALAN has existed as a body since 2008. Yes, about 13 years. We are affiliated to the Association of Legal Administrators, Illinois, USA, which is the primary organization for legal management professionals. The Association of Law Firm Administrators Nigeria, ALAN, we have a vision, and the vision is to shape the future of legal practice management by building professional competences through strategic collaboration and through thought leadership. Hence, a webinar like this that has put together great thought leaders in the industry. And we also exist to provide support and to enhance the development of management best practices in the law industry. Law industry meaning law firms, corporate legal departments, and of course, government legal agencies. Today we have an amazing lineup of speakers. I cannot wait to glean from their knowledge and many years of practical experience. They will be talking about strategies for improving law firm profitability, and you will agree with me that this indeed is a very, very relevant topic. Faced with the disruptive new world of business and all that is going on at such a speed, strategy is no more a 5-year plan set in stone or a beautifully bound document gathering dust on the shelves of offices, or indeed is it a plan trapped only in the minds of our managing partners or partners. We are faced with so many issues in this industry. Imagine the erstwhile protected profession is opening up at top speed. We have the alternative legal services provider, the ALSPs, the big four legal and quite other industries that seem to be eroding our space, if you want to say so. So profit is threatened, and strategies, we do need to revisit strategies. And before I hand over to Ali, I just want to ruminate about what strategies are. Strategies really, for me, are actionable steps that need to be taken, and probably some steps that we need to stop as law firms or as businesses. Strategy is simply making clear-cut choices on resource allocation. And strategy does need to be refreshed from time to time. It has to be refreshed so that it is not detached from reality. So I'm really happy to stop here and to listen to our panelists interrogate this topic, the strategies for improving law firm profitability, and also to elucidate on practical opportunities that are staring us in the face and we probably are not seeing, opportunities that will drive long-term value creation in our law firms. That is why we are gathered. So over to you, Ali. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you. It's truly amazing the lineup we have today. And I would like to welcome all, first of all, before I welcome all our speakers, I would like to welcome our participants. I can see that we have a very strong representation from managing partners, attorneys at various levels, and professionals as well within the law firm. So it's pretty exciting, the conversations that we'll be having this morning, and you're all welcome. I'd like to welcome you formally to this webinar organized by the Association of Law Firm Administrators Nigeria. My name is Ali Afegbua. I'm the lead consultant at Nubianet Consulting. I've worked for many years in the line of, as an attorney at first, and then as a business development manager at a few notable firms in Nigeria. And it's my privilege to moderate this webinar today. So I welcome you, and also just a few ground rules before we proceed. Please feel free to put in your questions in the chat box. I know you have questions as the speakers start with their sessions. So put your questions in, type in your questions in the chat box, and we'll get to them. And in particular, we'll be flowing, we'll be having a flow of the sessions accordingly. So try not to unmute yourself. Do not interrupt any of the speakers. And yes, so we'll move on now swiftly into the lineup. And before I also go into the introductions, I'd like to also thank all of the wonderful professionals who have been involved in making sure that we got this lineup, the lineup that we have today. This is the first time that you have a collection of such wonderful minds and people with such experience in this particular area addressing these issues, and with a global perspective as well. So it's important that we have these conversations. The Association of Law Firm Administrators doesn't just exist for specific issues regarding just the welfare of administrative professionals, but more importantly, the ultimate goal is to get law firms more profitable, to make law firms more profitable as businesses. So we're looking at this particular topic is very important, especially today as law firms recover from global happenings and various other issues that we'll get into as the sessions go along. So thank you so much for making the time to attend. Feel free to put in your questions and I'll get right into the introductions right now. So we have with us today Mr. David Freeman. David Freeman is a former practicing lawyer from New York. He's also an award-winning consultant and a two-time best-selling author. He is a member of the Hall of Fame of the most prestigious publication in the United States for being voted the #1 business development consultant and coach in the US for 3 consecutive years. He's worked with nearly half of the 200 largest law firms in the US, and for over 26 years, he's trained and coached thousands of lawyers and leaders in hundreds of firms worldwide on how to generate new revenue. So it's a privilege to have you here today, sir, and we'll be looking forward to the insights, strategies, and tips that you're giving us today. We also have on the lineup Cynthia Lorraine. Cynthia is the founder of Lorraine Gold Consulting. She has over 20 years working experience as both a legal practitioner and a business development professional in global law firms. She has a strong reputation as a dedicated professional who is proactive, pragmatic, and passionate about business development, particularly in client development. So you get to hear from her today on various strategies and tips as well on how to make your firm more profitable. The next on our lineup is Scott Cohen. So Scott Cohen has an amazing reputation as a leader in content marketing, thought leadership content marketing, through his platform Africa Legal. I'm sure you've heard of Africa Legal, and he'll be delving into a few issues regarding thought leadership marketing today. So I'm pretty excited about that and where law firms can take things. We also have from a more local perspective, we have Mr. Adedoyin Afun. He's a partner at Bloomfield Law Practice, and he'll be touching on some of the realities in working at a law firm in Nigeria and some of the challenges and probably business model practices as well that probably need to change, and some of the ways in which to address some of these issues. So that's our lineup for today, and I will get right into the various questions that we have for our speakers. So the format of this webinar will be our speakers will address particular questions as we go along, and yes, we'll proceed right away. So thank you for honoring our invitation, and we'll get right into our lineup. So first on the lineup is Mr. Freeman. So Mr. Freeman, you have the floor. So your question is, what top strategies would you recommend for building more resilient and profitable law firms?
Okay, thank you. So let's see if you could stop sharing, and then I'll be able to share what I have. And welcome all. Thank you. A good morning to you. For me, a good very early morning. It's what is it, 3:48 here, and I'm just so glad to be able to get a chance to share with you some of the things that I have been learning over the last 26, almost 27 years of being in this practice. So let me go share my screen here. So the topic that I have today, I'm going to be taking a look at the subset of this conversation about resilience and profitability, which is we need our lawyers to be able to know how to get out there and attract the work. There are going to be other speakers that will dissect the topic of profitability and how do you determine which work is good profitable work. That's great. But my focus is how can our lawyers have the skills and the comfort and the techniques to be able to reach out. So what I want to do is talk to you about the techniques that I have seen, and this has worked certainly in live settings, but also in this pandemic setting where people have to be remote. The goal is, how can your lawyers get meetings with people virtually or live? How can they stay top of mind, like Scott will talk about with thought leadership techniques? And how can they stay in touch with them over time to build a strong relationship that builds the kind of trust that will determine whether they're going to get the work or not? And it's interesting, even yesterday, I got a phone call or an email from a potential client who said that they were going to be going with another speaker for a retreat they had. So I said, that's great. If you don't mind, can you share with me what the decision point was there? And they said, well, the reason is that a bunch of our lawyers knew another speaker very, very well. And that was the determining factor. So, I get how those things can make all the difference in the world. And that's why I want to share with you some of these techniques. So you see my image up here. It's this brain represents the mind of a potential client. And then that image inside the brain, that's your lawyer. And these are your lawyers trying to be within the brains of potential clients so that when they're thinking, I need a lawyer, will your lawyers be there? The challenge is they may meet this person one time or another at a conference, but then they fade away. And so what I want to share with you are some techniques to embed your lawyers in the minds of the clients. And so what it starts with is what I call gifts. And, it's challenging to be able to walk into a client and say, hi there, when are you going to give me work? None of your lawyers want to do that, and none of your clients want to hear that. So we have to find ways that your lawyers can offer value to have a reason to be able to be back in touch. So I'm going to share with you the highlights of some of these techniques. Unfortunately, in this economy right now, a lot of people have lost jobs. And so to be able to help a prospective client find a new opportunity can be certainly a very, very powerful way to build a long-term relationship. I remember there was a managing partner in a firm in Denver, Colorado, and he had a client who, it was a bad year for this client. He got sick, he got divorced, he lost his home. And so the managing partner offered to take him in because he had a guest house. And so this person lived with him for a while. He helped him get a new job. Needless to say, this person was very, very loyal going forward from there. So helping people when they've got their challenges. I remember an employment lawyer, there was a client who had left the firm a year before. And this employment lawyer followed up with this client and found out that this person was miserable in their new job. And in this lawyer's law firm, they had job postings because it was an employment lawyer firm. So they always knew if there were some new jobs. He called her back to suggest 2 or 3 jobs. And he said, by the end of this conversation, she was in tears. She was so moved that someone from out of the blue reached out and thought about her situation to help her. So your lawyers have a lot of ways to be very impressive to their clients. They have to use these techniques. Another one, sometimes clients need a little bit of research done. So that's a great excuse to do a little bit of homework, ask more questions about what their issues and challenges are. And now you're already having your lawyers audition for them. They're demonstrating how they think. They've already started to solve the problem. It's logical that a client might say, well, perhaps I should hire you to go and solve this problem for us. So in the right situation, doing research can be a tool and technique to reach out and to stay top of mind. Another approach that I've seen some firms use, especially when they want to try to have a client try to use a new practice area. So they may say to a client, we've always wanted you to try our litigation department because we think that the talent that we have could be a good fit for you. So we're willing to take on one of these matters in this area if you think that would be helpful so that we can actually audition for you. And I've seen firms that have offered $5,000, $10,000 of free services so that they can get their foot in the door and try them out. Here's another technique that I find is really very, very effective. And, this is great for this. This was a great technique, certainly during the pandemic. So a lot of clients had a lot of issues that they'd never faced before. And so when the lawyers came in, some of them created a COVID checklist. And they would say to the client, we know you've got a lot of unprecedented issues that you're facing. Let's go down this list and talk about how are you doing in these areas of employment? How are you doing in these areas of contracts? How are you doing in these areas of insurance? So on and so forth. And so the beauty of this is that it gets the lawyer to have a whole list of questions to ask. Very often our lawyers don't know the practice, the cross-practice skills that exist inside the firm. So this checklist gives them a nice little cheat sheet to be able to remind themselves of the questions to ask. And even in a non-pandemic situation, when a lawyer is coming in to ask for client feedback, it's always nice to say, by the way, wondering how you're doing in these areas as well, because we care about your legal health. And this is a way to give you a checkup. So that's a nice technique. Another one that I'm sure Scott will talk about is all the different forms of thought leadership. And one of the techniques that we're finding is very popular right now is using short videos. Anywhere from literally 2 to 5 minute videos on a very, very specific topic. And then what some lawyers are doing is they're actually using this as an excuse to interview people for those videos. So it gives your lawyers an opportunity to reach out to anybody they want to be able to say, hi, we're doing our video series on this topic, and we would love to invite you as a co-presenter on it. I mean, you could reach out to people you have never met before using a technique like this. Another one that's great non-pandemic is to try to go and visit on site, to see the facility that the client has. I know there are some employment lawyers who say it's just like Christmas every time to walk around inside of the plant of the lawyer, of the client, because there's always something going on. He calls it the by the way factor. Oh yeah, by the way, do you have any lawyers that can handle this and this? So it's one of the favorite techniques. I know one lawyer, he measures himself on trying to have 50 visits a year with his different clients because he knows that it's going to generate work. Another favorite technique is joining clients when they are doing their own internal strategic planning. This could be done live. This could be done virtually. And it gives your lawyers an opportunity to be able to get in the room with all of the major decision makers. And it is such a powerful technique. After doing a presentation like this last year, a managing partner reached out to me and said, I just used this technique and I got 5 new pieces of work that I never would have gotten otherwise if I wasn't in that room. So your lawyers, they need to suggest this to the clients. Many lawyers do this and they do not bill for their time because it's incredibly valuable relationship building and marketing time. And often I've heard that lawyers will do this, but only when the clients bring it up. But to me, that's just the tip of the iceberg. There are so many more opportunities if your lawyers are proactive. Also, feedback. This is always an interesting topic. Lawyers don't necessarily like to ask for feedback, or they often feel like they just know that the client is doing well and we're great in the relationship, and it just may not be that way. So and you could almost gamify this. You could measure and ask your lawyers, over the next 30 to 45 days, we would like you to ask for feedback from 1 or 2 of your best clients. Arm them with some good questions so that you make it easy for them. But if they can go in and ask the feedback questions, which is looking backward, but then also ask future planning questions, meaning, so given that there's these new regulations that have been put in place, how is your company planning to deal with that? Or if you see there's something in the news, I see you're building a new facility. What are you doing about site permitting and et cetera, et cetera? So there may be a lot of legal work that clients haven't decided who they're going to give it to yet, that by asking future planning questions, that work can come to your lawyers instead of going to some other law firm. Providing training. So to be able to, again, virtually or live, to be able to go on site or using technology like this, to be able to conduct training sessions with clients. And then there's a subtle technique here. So in your own firms, you may be providing training to your lawyers on certain topics. This can actually be a great opportunity to be able to invite clients in, to be able to come into your offices, to be able to meet your lawyers and participate in your training. It actually is nice for younger lawyers because this way the younger lawyers in the client's operation get a chance to build relationship with your younger lawyers, and that helps them start relationships that can keep going through their career. Another technique I've seen is the office hours technique. And I've seen this with associations where the lawyer will say, once a month, I'm happy to carve out 2-3 hours where people can sign up for blocks of time, and I will answer questions to the level that I'm allowed to answer them. I've seen this in very, very large client organizations where the lawyer says, I'm going to be billing you anyway because I do so much work for you. Why don't I come in once a month and work from your offices, and anybody who wants to come in can chat with me. And lawyers who have been through using a technique like this have often mentioned that they get to meet so many new people inside the organization, and new work comes from it. Similarly, sometimes large clients need a lawyer. And so to loan one of your lawyers to a client develops tremendous relationships. Clients love to meet other potential clients. And so to be able to put them together for their mutual benefit is a very, very powerful tool. And so your firm has so many contacts, and there are so many people that should meet each other. So to be in that flow and help it make those introductions can be very powerful. Of course, going to conferences, if again, virtually or live, and also having your lawyers take leadership positions, because these leadership positions get them to stand out. A lot of our lawyers go to these events and the seminars, and they just don't get noticed. But in leadership positions, it actually gives your lawyers excuses to reach out and talk to anybody in the association. During the pandemic, this was one of the favorite techniques that lawyers used, to start their own virtual group. And it could be for any reason. It could be a substantive legal reason, or there was one lawyer who had been in-house at one of the major medical manufacturing companies. And so he put together a virtual wine tasting where he invited a lot of the alumni who had left that company to go to other companies to do a wine tasting. They hired a sommelier. They sent everybody 3 bottles of wine. They would taste the wine. They would comment on it. He said it was a great event, and he actually got work a week later from somebody who he hadn't been in touch with for 5 or 10 years before that. And this was the excuse and the reason he was able to use. Another great technique is your lawyers are writing, your lawyers are speaking. And so to be able to ask your lawyers to invite somebody to co-present with them on a panel, to co-author an article, or to interview them for articles. This is, again, another technique where they can talk to people they know, or they could reach out to people they've always wanted to meet. So when we go to the topic of profitability, well, you've got to bring in the work from new people first before you could even look at it being profitable. And what you're seeing here on these techniques are a bunch of approaches that you can use to actually get your lawyers to reach out. Also, having them join organizations. And it's interesting, sometimes our lawyers will join organizations because they have a strong passion for a topic. And I don't want them to mix that up with business development. Certainly they should go where their heart is, but they have to make sure that if they're thinking that's business development, they need to make sure to be with organizations where potential clients will be there. Also, acknowledgement. In the news, your lawyers might see that a client did something, or somebody within a client did something. And this is a great technique for former clients, because I've often heard lawyers say, I don't want to reach out to a former client because it's so apparent that all I want to do is get work from them. But if you could reach out with, congratulations, notice this happened to you in the company. How is that going for you? That can open up the by the way moment where a client might say something and actually have a piece of work of business. Another one is similar to the co-authorship. I've had some lawyers who are doing research, or they're actually writing books. And so they're writing article after article that is building that. And then they are interviewing clients and potential referral sources as the source material for the book, which gives them a beautiful excuse to be able to reach out. Social events, doing things with clients. And then last but not least, of course, working LinkedIn. And so this is a short list here of techniques that you can bring back to your lawyers that can help them have that excuse they need to be able to go out there to the market. And here we go. I'm 15 seconds over, so I will stop sharing and hand it over to the next person. Thank you again for inviting me to this.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. That was very rewarding. That was also thought-provoking as well, to understand some of these principles and see where we can actually apply them. And I'm sure a lot of law firms or people from law firms participating in this webinar today can relate to some of these strategies, but are we really doing them? Are we applying them? So those are questions that need to be answered. But before I proceed, I would like to, okay, so we'll just move it along then. Thank you so much once again, Mr. Freeman, for those wonderful points. And I'm sure you participants will admit that he did justice to the question here. And some of those strategies you can actually start applying immediately to improve aspects of your practice. Moving on now to the next speaker, we have Cynthia Lorraine. Cynthia, are you ready for us?
Yes, my video is on. Hopefully you can see me.
Fantastic, thank you. I will stop sharing so you can have access to the controls. Thank you so much for joining us today. And your question is, what are the best practice suggestions for achieving profitability through pricing, financial hygiene, and data analytics? So we all know some of us anyway, who've had the opportunity of speaking with you, know that you are most suited for answering this question. So I will hand the ball to you. So take it away. Thank you,
Thank you.
Cynthia.
Thank you. Can you see that? Can you see my slides?
It's coming on.
Okay, I can't actually see my, okay, hopefully you can see that.
Yes, it's on.
It's on now.
Okay, perfect. Okay, that took a couple of minutes. Okay, so thank you very much for having me. David, I loved a number of your suggestions and would love to actually have a chat about those afterwards. So, I mean, this is the great thing about doing these panels is even as speakers, we're also picking up on things. But a couple of the ones that you mentioned speak to cross-selling, which is a big topic that we're looking at the moment. So really keen to follow that up. So thank you for that. I'm going to talk a bit about profitability in the context of pricing, financial hygiene, and data analytics. What I wanted to do before I give, so I'm just going to give a couple of suggestions, but before talking about my suggestions, I actually wanted to take a step back and look at what we mean when we talk about profitability. So hopefully it's stuff that people are already aware of, but I think it's always worth just thinking about what do we mean by profitability. So, you know, when we simply put, a profitable firm is one that's making more money that it's spending in terms of its overheads. And I state that as a definition because it's actually possible to have massive income and yet not be profitable. You know, when we're looking at profitability, there are a number of measures, but these are the key ones. So the first one would be PEP, or profit per equity partner. And this represents the annual profits of a law firm divided by the total number of equity partners. You also have utilization rates, which is really a measure of how much time a lawyer is spending on the work that's then billable to clients. And I'll talk a bit more about that in a second. But utilization is usually expressed as a percentage of, it's usually expressed as a percentage, and then it's calculated by dividing a lawyer's billable hours by the total number of hours they work. And we see this as a measure of productivity. So really important distinction between that and the next one. Realization rates, which is a measure of how much time a lawyer is recording in comparison to how much fees are then collected at the end. And this is really a measure of performance or efficiency. So ultimately, we all want to be profitable firms. That's why we're here. It makes for a happier life. We can better serve our clients. We can better pay our staff. But there are a number of impediments to profitability. Now, the first one is probably going to be pretty obvious to you, but the second one might be less so. So the first one there is soaring overhead costs. The things that tend to strip away our profitability will be, you know, physical infrastructure. The need to be in a building, either you've bought it or you've rented it. This usually means having decent offices in a well-regarded location, which aligns to your brand and is in close proximity to clients. Obviously, COVID has had a huge knock-on effect on that because so many of us are working from home. And I think quite an important and interesting discussion would be to understand what firms in Nigeria are going to be doing going forward. You know, is the view that you continue to work from home or that people head back to offices, or is there a blend? And as part of that, what effect would that have in the level of real estate investments that law firms are making in the physical infrastructure that they currently use? Because that's ultimately also going to affect profitability. The other thing is staff. Obviously, the need to hire, retain, look after great talent, which nowadays is not just about hiring good legal talent. I'm particularly pleased to see the different job titles that are popping up in different law firms, non-legal job titles. And I'm going to touch a bit on this in a minute. But, you know, these are people that need to be paid and looked after. And finally, technology, which everybody will know, usually has a pretty large upfront cost. It's estimated that in total, law firms will spend between 45 to 50% on their overall overhead costs. So you can see immediately that even if you have massive income and then you're having to spend quite a lot on your overheads, that's going to impact on your profitability. But the second impediment, which might be less obvious to you, is the traditional law firm model. And this really actually is a big profit killer, because if you think about it, the profitability of a law firm traditionally is not driven by efficiency. The nature of the billable hour means that by definition, the longer something takes, the more you get paid. But that doesn't make you efficient. So if you're spending 3 hours on something that could have been done in one, you might be getting paid more, but that doesn't necessarily make you more efficient. The other thing is the individualistic nature of the work that we do. So the business of dispensing specialist legal advice is competitive. The more you know as an individual lawyer, the better positioned you are to make money. So again, that's not necessarily the most efficient way to operate, but that is the traditional model. And then finally, not only are lawyers encouraged to be good at what they do, but we're encouraged to always be right. So consequently, you have this natural born reticence in that we are not necessarily innovative. We're not necessarily open to experiment, because experimentation by its definition means trying and failing and then trying again until you get to the ultimate right answer. But for a lawyer, we are paid to be right. So, that traditional model in many ways is a bit of an impediment. Right, so I've listed out a couple of what I hope will be useful suggestions. What I've done is I've kind of picked on 3 challenges, and there are many more. I mean, we'd probably need a whole day session to run through absolutely everything, but I've picked up on 3 that I see a lot working in this jurisdiction and broadly across Africa, because my business is Africa focused. So the first one is timekeeping. For your law firm, obviously the main form of revenue generation is client billing. Whether you're billing by the hour or on a contingency basis, or you're using some other method, it all comes down to the time factor. So timekeeping and time recording is critical. And for me, one of the best mitigations, one of the best things that a firm can do is to build that internal skill of truly understanding how your time is spent on various activities. So looking at utilization rates and realization rates, as I just defined on the first slide. And this relates both to chargeable and non-chargeable time. Think about it. If time is money and you don't understand how your time is being used, then how on earth can you assess or quantify your profitability? First of all, how do you know which employees, which lawyers within the firm are generating the most revenue? How do you work out which matters are consistently losing you money and therefore might be the things that you actually need to avoid? So it might seem like I'm stating the obvious, but having worked as a consultant in this environment for a period of time, I'm astounded by how many lawyers don't record time at all. And of those that do record time, many do not analyze the time that they have recorded. So they might have it on an Excel sheet and it might get looked at, just to get an overall view, and maybe at appraisal time, it will be sort of a clocking up of, has this person collated this amount of hours? But there isn't necessarily that in-depth analysis around whether it's chargeable or non-chargeable time, and how that factors into managing transactions. There are so many tools now that are easily accessible, many tools that exist for time recording, and a lot of these operate even on mobile devices. So I think, this is a big thing that firms need to be thinking about, is time recording. And even in the absence of actually purchasing software, just going back and being able to analyze your time in terms of looking at calendars, emails, phone logs, document management, just to understand who is billing what, where, why, and how. The second point on that slide is around financial hygiene. So, closely tied to the first point, but it's not just about your overall understanding of time, but what are the metrics within your specific firm that are driving your profitability? Sometimes I think lawyers get so caught up in dispensing legal advice that they minimize the importance of understanding the management of a legal business. If you are a business owner, it's your job to understand how your business makes money. And it's your job to spend time looking at the numbers, whether you're, a lover of financial matters or not. You need to get comfortable and familiar with understanding the metrics. And frankly, I have to say, I see far too many lawyers just go off and set up firms without really considering this important fact, the business of running a law firm. A good lawyer does not a good business person make. And I say that not to be, insulting or derogatory to my colleagues. I'm a lawyer, so I can say that. I am running a business and I've had to learn just the importance of some of this stuff. It's why I'm a big believer in law firms involving non-lawyers in their senior management. And it's something that we're beginning to see, even in this market here in Nigeria. Here in the UK, there have been huge strides in the last 15 years to introduce what's called the ABS, or the Alternative Business Structure, which are regulated organizations that provide legal services, but they have the involvement of a non-lawyer, which means that it's not just having a lawyer sort of as your chief marketing officer or as your chief operating officer, and they're not just a senior manager, but they have a direct stake in the business in the same way that the other partners do. So, I think that, this is a really, really important thing to be considering. 3 points there just on some of the mitigation around financial hygiene: pricing effectiveness, financial reporting, and expense management. And please tell me when I've run out of time, because I could talk all day. But the first one, just on pricing effectiveness. So this is really around understanding your firm's performance and discipline in terms of matter pricing, fee structures, gearing, transaction scoping, write-downs, post-bill discounts. In essence, it's about taking time to examine your firm's realization of service value. So are you pricing to achieve fair value for the work that you do? And does that value hold until the end when the fees are collected? Because it's one thing to state a price up front, but actually, if you haven't properly scoped or managed that transaction, that fee may not be what you collect. And so that's the measure. That's the true measure. Hopefully some of you were able to attend the session that we had yesterday. I run a monthly program called LGC Pulse, which is a free program for African law firms, or for law firms across Africa, where we give marketing insights. We invite somebody, a bit like what David was just suggesting about sort of inviting other people to interview. So we do that as a business. We invite people, I interview them, and they share best practice on marketing. And so yesterday we had a session on having better pricing conversations. And so one of the important points that came up was about getting to the point in your law firm cycle where clients are not simply comparing your price with that of your competitors, but they're comparing your price with what's at stake if they don't use you. In other words, they might look at someone else and think, actually, that firm is cheaper from an initial pricing perspective. But when they look at the end game, there is so much that they will lose if they don't use you, perhaps because you've got internal, previous knowledge of the client or the sector, or just based on the relationship. So really important to think about pricing effectiveness and value preservation. The other point there is about AFAs, or alternative fee arrangements, something that I'm really, really passionate about, something that I'm doing a lot of work on at the moment. But broadly defined, this is any legal fee arrangement that isn't tied to the traditional hourly rate. So, I've made the point around efficiency and the fact that our traditional law firm models aren't necessarily based on efficiency. And it's a topic that, as a practice, we're beginning to advise much more on. Again, one of the points that was raised yesterday was about the need for law firms not just to respond when clients are asking about AFAs, but to proactively push them. And that involves understanding them. So, hopefully some of you know what I'm talking about when I talk about alternative fee arrangements. But for some of you, that might be a concept that you're not familiar with. But there are a broad spectrum of pricing models that have nothing to do with the hourly rate. You have things like, from the sort of baby type of AFAs like blended rates or capped fees, all the way up to the more grown-up, if you like, AFAs like virtual banks, collared fees, contingency fees, etc., etc. And as I say, this is something that I'm super keen on doing lots of work on. So if people want to speak to me about it afterwards, please do get in touch. The other thing on there is financial reporting and financial signaling. So there's an adage that goes, time kills cash. In other words, the longer it takes you to turn your bills into actual money, the less likely it is that you will get that money. Many firms, again, just based on my own observations, are not focused enough on their collectible fees. And therefore, they're just not achieving that compressed cash conversion, i.e. that compressed amount of time between billing and collection. And often this is because they just don't have the financial rigor or the discipline around internal reporting. So having alerts for, when your inventory is getting really huge, or where there are work in progress spikes, or where there is notable leakage, just understanding where losses are being made, or even things as simple as delayed invoice processing. So another suggestion there is just to, be on top of your financial reporting. And then the last one, just on expense management. So I read an interesting article a couple of weeks ago about the fact that many law firms in Africa do not automate their disbursement recovery, which means that not only are they regularly failing to recover costs or expenses from clients, but fee earners are spending so much time filling in manually expense requests, and that's consuming time, because actually that time could be better utilized for unbillable work. So I'm not advocating that people necessarily go out and buy, some expensive software, but I do think there is some real value in investing in disbursement management and recovery software, so that lawyers can engage in better cost recording, and just so that certain processes can be automated. For me, this is a really quick win that will translate directly into profits. And it's estimated that just automating those systems can improve your recovery by about 40%. Just my final point there, and I hope I've not gone on too long, but just data analytics. Through the work that I do as a business owner and as a consultant to law firms across Africa, I've learned that in the context of data, people really do not know what they don't know. In other words, many lawyers and law firms don't know the value of the data that they currently possess. It amazes me that each time I start working with a law firm, and maybe I'll do a simple audit on their website or their social media, and it transpires that they have never bothered to find out who's visiting these platforms. Or they'll organize a webinar like this, and they've never actually analyzed who showed up, the contacts on the list. Or maybe maybe they've put them on MailChimp or some other electronic platform, but they've never really done much with that data. In this day and age, data is gold. And if you're not engaged in the business of analyzing the data that you possess, then you are leaving money on the table every single day. For me, there are so many things that you can easily do to understand your data. Last year at the beginning of the lockdown, we created a checklist, a free checklist for law firms, just to say, look, now that you have this additional time where people are not spending 4 hours commuting from Ikeja to VI, why not invest this time analyzing the data that you have? And so we went through a list of things that every law firm can have a look at, just to understand what data they have and to start to make use of it. So there's so much more that I would love to say, but I've probably gone on long enough. Those are some of the points that I just wanted to raise, and just to suggest some of the quick wins that people might want to start thinking about in terms of best practice. I've just got that slide up there in case people want to connect with us. We are a company that is supporting marketing, and therefore we are marketing ourselves. So we are all over social media. We give away a lot of free resource, a lot of free information. I'm very, very passionate about ensuring that law firms in Africa are playing at the same level, if not above, their international counterparts. That's precisely the reason that I left my very comfortable job in central London to do the work that I do. So please do utilize the resources that are available. And that's it from me. Thank you.
Such amazing points. Very insightful. Thank you so much. I wish you could go home more. I wish you had more time, but unfortunately, we had to limit it to just 15 minutes. And so participants can reach out to Cynthia on the following contact details. And Thank you so much once again, Cynthia. There are a few other points that I would like to follow up on, but I'll save that for the question and answer session, which will follow after the last speaker. But without wasting much time, I'd like to just immediately start or move on to the next speaker. So Scott Cohen, are you ready for us?
Yes, I am.
Scott will be speaking on thought leadership content. Thank you so much for joining us, Scott. You'll be speaking on thought leadership content marketing. Are law firms doing enough? What are they missing? So thank you so much for joining us, Scott.
Fantastic, Ali. Thanks very much. And firstly, I'd just like to say there were two great topics discussed by both David and Cynthia with very relevant parts. So I would implore anyone to get in touch with them both and use their expertise to see if they can assist. So Cynthia, I have to say that data is key to everything as well. It sits very firmly into our business here at Africa Legal. Look, I think I want to keep it very high level and personal with everyone today, and thanks for attending. So there has been some great progress, but fundamental mistakes are still being made with thought leadership and content marketing. If we look at content marketing, it's far too often being designed and framed and published with the publisher's own interests and perspective at its heart. For example, what they think is currently engaging and worthy of commentary. Another crime is to force your firm's own internal dynamics onto your external customer base by constantly publishing in line with practice areas, not sectors or issues. Customers rarely face a business issue which falls neatly into the categories which your firm has traditionally divided itself into. For example, commercial, disputes, tax, employment, trust, etc. Truly engaging content seeks to address business as a whole. And we must never forget that law is still a business. Issues and real world challenges, not extremely insular single issue topics or legislative updates relating to a single issue. As with so many things, you need to park your own biases and put the customer at the heart of designing and publishing your content. Now, just because you're proud of your website and care about it because you spent X amount of thousands of dollars on redesigning, don't think for a moment that your customers care or even visiting it to digest the content. Social media events, third parties, dedicated content curation and publishing are a far better option. David mentioned that in the first talk today, and that sits very firmly with us. Don't disregard or ignore your own website, but trust me, it's not going to drive your firm's profitability on its own. Thought leadership is a big area that everyone's looking at now. Something that's very close to our heart here at Africa Legal is introducing true thought leaders to a community which is transparent and collaborative. So often touted, but so often wrongly labeled. He who shouts the loudest and most often is not a thought leader. There's someone with fast fingers and an internet connection. When wanting to truly own and demonstrate expertise in a certain area, you cannot be all things to all men. So aim to create a piece of truly original and insightful content on an issue that you and your customer genuinely care about. It does not have to be obviously or instinctively linked to your products or services. Stop looking for the easiest route to your products and start looking for the fastest route to meaningful dialogue and interest. And simply the rest will come. You can make your life much easier, once again, putting the customer first. A superb way to do this is to ask them questions and simply comment on the results. This demonstrates in a wonderful degree of customer centricity, either you're not looking to simply talk a topic, but you've spent the time to ask the customers, potential customers, to give their opinion, and you are simply adding to such commentary. So, kind of many ways to get it wrong, but this biggest thing is simply not to try. I see this all the time. If you take a single lesson, it should be to start writing about what you care about, with brevity also being key, and not what you think people want to read about, or what makes the easiest road into the sale or promotion of your own products or services. Putting the customer first and your ego second, sales will come and conversations will start without a sale. Now, I am already hearing from both our African and international law firm clients that, again, planned travel, events and sponsorships are again being postponed or cancelled in response to this terrible pandemic we all find ourselves living in the last 15 months. Such decisions are no doubt well reasoned and considered, but firms should be careful not to allow gaps in their presence and client engagements to go unfilled. Leaner, more accessible or technology-driven product providers are justifiably going to be interested in filling any gaps. Now look, face-to-face is always going to be a vital component for any law firm strategy. This is not a problem and an approach which I fully endorse and can't wait to get back out to the continent. Where firms need to be addressing potential softness, however, is ensuring that their physical presence is matched by their digital presence when it comes to talking and engaging with their current potential customers. The joy of a consistent, robust, long-term digital presence is in its flexibility, its scalability, and its relatively low cost. Now look, law firms and some of the managing partners and practice managers on this today, we all know that line items such as air travel, hotels, client entertainment, meals, mileage are all not going away. But I implore firms, however, to look at the benefits of relocating a proportion of such spend to developing and growing their digital presence. And no, this doesn't mean that you have to spend megabucks on a fancy website, which clients simply won't visit and high five over a job well done. I've previously explained the many benefits of proper content marketing strategies. David picked up on a few of these, but I'm just going to recap. Digital content distribution. If your upcoming speaking engagement has been cancelled, like so many have, why not consider doing what David said, is creating a short video piece to camera. Now you can even use your smartphone or inexpensive camera stand, which covers off some of the points you wanted to talk about. Now, for maximum benefit, be sure to encourage questions, feedback from the audience, whenever it will be through social media or a traditional email. Now, if video isn't quite your style, put your finger to the keyboard, get writing. Short, relaxed style content can be a great conversation starter. Just remember, you wouldn't bombard a potential prospect with your legal brilliance and bullet points of what your firms do at a client reception event or a dinner. It just doesn't work. So it remains, for us to see how long this particular travel and handshake limiting threat will continue, but it is going to last. And I implore law firm leaders here and marketers to start considering how to developing their own consistent digital presence. We'll implore them from the current and we'll protect them from the current and future business disruptors. But where a lot of firms fail is in the execution. And echoing what Cynthia was saying earlier, do busy associates have time to do all this marketing? Do clients care about anything other than effective legal advice? There are some top tips on producing content that clients and potential clients want to see and which makes your team proud, Now, one is consider alternative formats. Daily, we are bombarded by content, and it is not always a topic that attracts and retains our attention, but often the presentation that draws our eyes and makes us click and read more. Now, in my experience, lawyers stand above other professional services in the quality of their drafted thoughts. Perhaps it's their drafting and advocacy skills shining through, or perhaps it's the need to broadcast an opinion. Where such thoughts fall flat, however, usually is in the same dreary presentation. A submitted chapter here, a case study opinion there, all presented in the stark black typeface, using far more words than necessary, and far too much detail is enough to make any online browser move on. The trick is to embrace a more conventional tone and include pictures, graphics. For data-driven pieces, use infographic format. Video offers a great way to deliver a message in an engaging and personal manner. Your personality will shine more through the vibrant sound and moving picture for more than 3 pages of Times News Roman. Secondly, embrace your personal interests. The law is not boring. Lawyers are not boring. Heavy duty analysis of insolvency regulation across 64 pages is boring, let's be honest. The old adage, people buy people, stands true in the delivery of legal services. These days, directors such as Chambers and Partners and Legal 500 are as much filled with platitudes around charm, presence, and gravitas as they are celebrating the brilliance and technical legal minds that we have. Lawyers who wish to stand out have a superb opportunity to do so through their articles, blog posts. I've seen how well reading blog posts by renowned lawyers on topics as diverse as food to fly fishing and sharing their personal passions written in a casual, friendly tone has increased their standing in the market, especially over the last 14 months. Occasionally, putting pen to paper on a topic of personal interest can also do wonders for the mental well-being of the legal author themselves, as much as it brings their humanity and personality into the minds of clients and potential clients. You speak, now write and share. The opportunity to speak and present at conferences, seminars, and workshops is ever increasing, especially using the mediums that we are using today. It's such a good thing. I love events. I love networking. I love to hear from eminent practitioners. I love to hear from speakers, including David and Cynthia that we have today, and learn. But a great missed opportunity presents itself far too often. Those making the effort to attend and speak at conferences also need to share it online. The conference organizers, like Ali, will thank you, and in my experience, promote it. The audience will thank you. And those who can't attend but want to benefit from your insight will also thank you. A word of advice though, please, no transcripts of panel discussions or verbatim scripts of pre-prepared speech. Make the extra effort to produce something engaging for the online audience. It will be appreciated and well received. Involve your clients. Most lawyers want to be seen as client-centered. To activate, educate an audience, an important topic in partnership with a client is a fantastic way to draw attention to both your insights while establishing your brand as a client-centered. Objections around conflicts and confidentiality do abound, but a sensible approach as a topic, hosting, location, and promotion will overcome these. Do not be afraid to approach clients with ideas of co-authored content. Many of you might have seen that across Africa Legal over the last 14 months. Many general counsel will also not admit, but they know it's in their interest as much as yours to do a little profile raising now and then. Now, where to host? We've touched on this. David mentioned right at the end, LinkedIn is an impressive tech-enabled platform designed for posting, promoting, and easy sharing of content to potentially millions of interested readers. Most law firms' websites are not at all. embrace social professional networking channels, external websites as the main conduit to the authored context. So long as you include contact details of the link to a well-presented content library on the firm's website, you also enhance readership and distribution with no limit. Now, the instant messaging, comment and like function on social media often the chance to capitalize on your comment. Be proud of defending your opinions in the comments section. Track your most liked. Share the content to gauge audience appetite and be open to messaging from engaged readers and potentially interested future clients. If you are sharing content on more than one website, amend it to each audience base. Google will be much kinder and push your SEO rankings to your efforts. So in conclusion, I agree with a lot that's been said by both our speakers today. It's about engaging. It's about engaging with the audience. Remember, the most important thing here, as we've gone through a pandemic, it's important that lawyers understand that you're only as good as your last deal, and everything's being driven by cost. And anyone wants to discuss that, you speak to Cynthia in relation to different fee structures. But hopefully that's given you an understanding about where we are, and I welcome any questions at the end of the presentation.
Thank you, Scott, for that insightful session. You do have 2 more minutes, and your time is not up yet. I just wanted to point out a few things on the back of what you've said regarding content formats. Digital formats are the new format for thought leadership content. So the rewards are countless when you invest in digital content formats. Now we're talking about audio, we're talking about video. For example, you have your various video sources. It could be from webinars, it could be from pre-recorded pre-recorded episodes of particular topics or topical areas that you want to disseminate. But it's very crucial that law firms invest in digital formats. Yes, attention spans have changed. People want to consume your content as quickly as possible. So thank you, Scott. I know that from the success of the Africa Legal Platform, people will see, or participants can visit and see the practical demonstration of how rewarding investing in digital content formats can be. And of course, going back to what Cynthia said as well regarding analytics, it's very crucial to measure. You need to have access to the data. You need to monitor how this content that you're putting out is being utilized or consumed. So it's not to just put out the content and hope that something happens. It must be deliberate. It must be followed up. You need to extract the data, then analytics from that. You need to utilize it, understand it in simpler terms on how you can use it for your marketing and business development. So I'll end it there. I just wanted to touch on certain aspects because it is very important. And in this COVID days, it is important to invest more in digital content marketing formats. So I'll move it on now to our next speaker. Last but not the least, Adedoyin Afun is going to be speaking to us on what factors hinder growth and profitability in Nigerian corporate law firms today. Adedoyin Afun is well suited to speak on this topic, and he's ready for us now.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. The floor is yours.
Thanks very much. I have no slides, so I'll just be talking to the topic. I would like to start by thanking Alan for the opportunity to talk about my experiences in this regard. I think it's an honor considering the caliber of people you have in the association and what they've done so far in Nigeria. I encourage them to do more. A bit of caveat, I think what I'm going to talk about is I'm work in progress, but what I thought to share, having listened to what David, Cynthia, and David said, is just giving more from a Nigerian law perspective and practice. I'm a Nigerian lawyer practicing in this space for a couple of years, and while putting together my thoughts on the paper today, I had to ruminate on a couple of my experiences in practice. Just to give a background, I think I started the business of law as an intern with a Nigerian law firm called Anga & where I really caught my teeth. I was at Anga & when they became Alex, and was with Alex after I went for my master's and came back and joined Bowen and Goodall before joining Bloomfield. I wanted to give a trajectory as to how every experience in these places has defined my experience as to determine profitability in a law firm. And to also put out from the beginning that the issues of profitability in any law firm are the same like in any business. That is, as you probably heard David, Cynthia, and David talk about, is that law is a business. I think that's one thing that is lacking in our law school curriculum. I'm a big advocate for that to be included. We need to understand that it is a business. And in a business, like Cynthia rightly mentioned, you need to know the numbers. You need to know the factors that determine the numbers. You need to be sure as to how that will affect your business in the long run. My experience also made me understand the need to start reading numbers. I had to get friends that were investment bankers, financial modelers, to explain to me how you actually define this number understanding. I just didn't want the days of financing when the bankers gave us a term sheet and we just needed to implement it. I wanted to understand how they arrived at these figures. That is back to another issue which I'll be discussing today. They need to understand your client's business, the history of the client, where the client is today and where the client wants to get to. David touched upon that. It's very, very important. Being in strategy meetings with clients cannot be underestimated. But back to the issue of a business of law, a young lawyer needs to understand that it's a given, whenever a client wants to engage us, the client, it's a given that we must know the law and be able to provide the service. But how do we get those instructions? We need to understand the parameters, the options available. David has talked about a couple of them. I won't go over it again. But one thing I always say to people from my personal experience is that family and friends are a good pointer as to how you determine to get instructions. I once approached an uncle of mine. I was trying to get work for him. He was the managing director of one of the big Nigerian banks. And just asked me, he said, "What's in it for you?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "What's in it for you? Does your firm have a commission culture?" I was like, "No." And that's where that conversation ended. Fast forward a few years later, and as in a different firm, he was happy to give the work to me. And that endeared me to constantly look at what the opportunities are. Family and friends, they want to support you, they want to grow you. Some Nigerian law firms have the commission culture. In my firm, the percentage is given to every staff, whether you work on a transaction or not. It's similar in a couple of other law firms I've worked. But that endears the client and kind of the lawyers to understand that you don't have to wait until you become a partner before you start marketing, before you start doing business development. The way you look, the way you dress, the way you talk is also part of who you are representing. So you always need to take that into consideration. Moving on swiftly, you need to do the work. If you do the work, you need to get paid. If you don't get paid, it's an exercise in futility. Now, the issue of getting paid by a client is also an art. In Nigeria, we know that there's some clients that whatever you get when they're engaging you, when they need you, is probably all you're ever going to get. So you need to take that into consideration into your pricing mechanism. Like Cynthia talked about issues of blended rates, contingency fees. Those are things that are coming up nowadays with the aim of us adding value. All this needs to be taken into consideration. And in understanding your clients as well and ensuring you get paid. One of my former bosses says it's very important that even if he knew the managing director, do I know the mid-management? Do I know the junior management in an office? Because the mid-management will become top management one day. And then if we have no relationship, there's no reason that gentleman or lady wants to work with us. If we don't know the lower management, that will become mid management one day. So essentially in every firm, you need to build relationships across the rank and file of your client base, not just, oh, I know this person, he gives me work. Yes, but at the end of the day, the people that will do the work will end up being top one day. So succession, and to ensure that your firm constantly gets referrals or maintains relationship with that client, you need to maintain relationship there with the rank and file. And lastly, issue of relationship. You finish with a client and you got paid, you need to follow through. How was the advice implemented? What was the intention? Is it going to turn into another transaction, or it may lead into something else? It's very important to understand our cycle. I believe in stressing it every time I get the opportunity, because I understand that there might be younger lawyers on this platform and not necessarily managers. But it's important for a business, a law firm, for everyone in the law firm to understand this cycle and constantly remind themselves. A big indices to this is that if you understand, I remember when I was, I think I was 2, 3, 4 years post-call, I just had a brainwave in the office, looked around, and I did a ladder in the office to understand that if I was the 10th person in the ladder earning $100, I added $50 on top of everyone for everybody. And I looked at the wage bill that my employers were coughing out every month, and it was staggering. And I thought to myself, what am I doing to add to support this wage bill? And that is when I started taking interest in understanding the back office. The back office in any law firm, I can't stress it enough, they are the spinal cord of the law firm. Lawyers can easily be said to be learned, and we get along to write our opinions, go to court and everything. But without the support of this back office, the HR, the finance team, the secretaries, the paralegals, we're almost naked. And that's why, as a matter of practice, I don't believe in sole proprietorship. But if you're a sole proprietor and you have a good back office, then you're well to do. But the back office supports you in various ways that you cannot imagine. And it's good in every law firm that Alan is pushing out now to ensure that every law firm has a good back office that implements this. They support you from the IT angle to various angles that you need to do. One other issue I wanted to touch upon, apart from the issue of the back office and the need to have that in place, is to understand that with the COVID, a lot of us sat at home and we're still able to make money despite the hard times that we had. And one of the realizations I had was that I considered some of our colleagues that are full frontal dispute resolution lawyers, particularly litigators. It must have been it was very hard for them. And I remember we had to design internally some kind of cost fee structure to ensure that whatever you bill, because our courts can drag on for years, and so you have cases whereby you billed $100 and the case drags on for 5 years, and then you exhausted it. It's very important for us to have a structure, particularly litigators, to have a blended practice. I think times have changed whereby one cannot just rely on just one source or area of practice. You need to probably start thinking about it and determining what your strengths are, what clients you have, and how you can provide value to them. I believe that if you have a client, you need to be able to service your client in the corporate law firm along 3 parameters or 4. One is in finance, one's in disputes, one is in corporate commercial. And corporate commercial for me hinges on whatever expertise might be. It's those 3 things that every business needs. And if you're able to provide that service to a client in all those areas, you'll be able to add value. We need to also ensure, like David rightly mentioned, to understand what our clients want to do and help them to breach it. In instances, we've had instances whereby a client wants to do something, another client has the expertise, and we just put them together to chat. If anything comes out of it, all well and good. If it doesn't, both clients understand that we have their interest at heart. And in instances whereby we've actually understood the need that even as much as we enjoy a good dispute to argue on issues, as clients, we need to also think about the commercial area for our clients. So if there's a need to mediate a dispute, settle out of court, we should take that approach and encourage our clients to do it. That way, our clients also appreciate whatever we need to do. Cost management cannot be stressed. They need to bill on time, They need to recover fees. And more importantly, there's a quote somewhere that I read when I was preparing for this. It reads that general management theory rarely deliver a productive silver bullet, and law is no exception. That said, productivity improvement comes from the application of innovation and minor but cumulative process changes. I would like to tweak that it's not just minor. You need to innovate to stay alive today. On the issue of thought leadership, like David already mentioned, I think one needs to distinguish oneself in what you want to do. You can't service the whole field. You need to be innovative. You need to be able to add value to clients. We cannot stress it more. The issue is always value, value, value. For me, if you bill, you need to bill a client in a way so that you can see that add value to the client. And as lawyers, the ultimate, in my opinion, is to become more than just a lawyer to a client, but to become a trusted advisor. The day, I always tell my students, the day a client starts asking you about non-legal things, then you know you have a client for life. Thank you very much. I'd like to stop there.
Thank you, Ade, for those invaluable points. And it was very interesting hearing you speak about the true situation behind the scenes and what lawyers need to be more aware of regarding running their firms as a business. And when it comes to running a business, the back office, as you say, where you have the administrative professionals, that is where you need to look at the business side of things. You need to look at how you can utilize some of the talents that you have and ask the right questions. How best can I serve? How best can I provide my services or provide these services to clients? And also, how best can the people you have in your employ serve the clients to the best of their abilities? So when those conversations need to be had, and the sooner law firms start looking at what they do as a business, where many business principles will definitely apply, principles regarding selling, principles regarding marketing, principles regarding how you convert the leads that you have apply as well. So it's important for these questions to be had. This is a time for reflection and strategizing. Of course, these need to be deliberately done, and it doesn't happen by accident. It needs to be, there needs to be well laid out plans, and then a strong bias for action and testing out some of these strategies. So we're moving on now to the question and answer part of this virtual event. I want to thank all of the speakers so far, and we'll be moving on to a few questions from participants. But before we do that, I would like to remind you again that you can address your question to any of the speakers, or you can just put a general question, and I'll have the speakers give their feedback on it. But before that, I would like to go into a few questions of my own, starting with David Freeman. Such an insightful session, if I may say so. Thank you so much for that session earlier. And the resource as well gave a very clear view, a very easy to understand illustration of the important parts to pay attention to regarding business development and marketing. So some of these strategies are wonderful. I'm sure some of them are being implemented by participating firms to certain degrees. But when it comes to lead conversion, I would like to ask this question now regarding your lead conversion cycle. So my question is, what should law firms pay more attention to when going after business? Quick wins, or have an understanding that to nurture a lead, you need to look at a particular or long-term investments that they need to make regarding particular clients. I don't know if it's clear.
Yes.
But, oh, okay. So
yeah.
I can clarify any bits if you need me to.
Yes. No, and I smile because I want to call this is the consultant's answer, which is both. And so the quick wins are important because you need to show that the efforts that are being put in are actually generating something, because otherwise people lose motivation over time. And so I often find that cross-selling opportunities are usually some of the best quick win opportunities that exist in a firm. And so to nurture those, to get the successes that will happen there, that can provide great fuel for then doing some of the things that might be longer term. So some of the things that Scott talks about, which can be to build a thought leadership campaign that might take years until that lawyer or that law firm is positioned as the expert in a certain area. So, like anything, you want to have things coming in at different levels in different ways. But I am a huge fan of activating a culture of cross-selling, or I like to call it cross-serving, where everybody is in service to each other. And then that can be really great fuel for doing a lot of other things. The longer term stuff, especially when we're talking about the younger lawyers, for them to be putting the time into building relationships. And going back to another part of the conversation earlier, and Cynthia talked about metrics, to actually a quick win for some of the younger lawyers might be measuring the number of relationships they have with people who could either be good referral sources or good clients. Now, we know we typically measure wins in revenue, but for different levels of the game in the lead nurturing factor there, we need to measure the number of people we know and how many times we stay in touch with them, because that will lead to the revenue down the road. So that's my long-winded way of saying both are very important.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that feedback, David. I have another question though. My question is related to strategy meetings with clients. So that's another fantastic way of being in their faces, being in the faces of clients and actually going after the business directly. But my question is related to, or probably I'm sure a lot of participants will relate to this, but when it comes to meeting the clients, the language, the sessions that should be had, the resources that should be provided, how should law firms, in terms of how they present the proposal present? Oftentimes, when you reach out to a client, you might be looking at them as a referral source, as you rightly said. But I believe there are times when this can be confused as to the value of that particular client. So what preparation should the team make, should law firms make before they approach these clients for these kinds of meetings and discussions? Because it could be to sell to them, sell legal services to them, or to nurture them as a lead for more referrals business.
Yeah. And so I think doing some great research on the client in advance is powerful, to engage them in the client feedback meetings, and then to ask questions about their business. Where's the business going? What are your needs? Good questions can uncover where the opportunities might be within the client. But then, so that's, do the research and then just ask them directly. And I've seen so many client feedback reports that have said that your lawyers don't ask us about other practice areas. We would give you the work, but you just don't even ask us. So generally asking them could be a powerful technique. And then let's talk about the referrals. So it's interesting. I find that most lawyers that I work with will not say to a client, "Hi, client, I would really love it if you could refer me to somebody else who needs a lawyer." They just feel too uncomfortable to say that. And I understand it. It's not the brand. It's not the positioning. They don't want to look like they're desperate for work. But we still want our clients to introduce us to other people. So I suggest go one level back And what I mean by that is use some of the techniques that I suggested. So let's just say that I say to you, Ali, I'm writing an article on a certain topic, and I'm wondering, do you know any other business people like you who might have an opinion on that I could interview? So in essence, I'm setting the tone for the kind of people that I want to meet. I am asking you for an introduction, but I'm not asking you for an introduction for work. It's what I call the colleague to colleague approach. We're doing this at an intellectual level, not a, oh, please hand me work level. And I find that then the lawyers are much more comfortable using a technique like that to build their network. And if we go back to metrics, we are measuring the number of what I call high value people that our lawyers can be in touch with. So that could be a way to be able to use these relationships to get referrals.
Fantastic. Thank you for your feedback on that.
Pleasure.
Very insightful. And I have another question here, but let me just see if, okay. So I have another question here for, we'll move on to Cynthia now. So my question is addressed to Cynthia. Cynthia, excellent points again. Thank you so much for that insightful session. So my question is related to your advice to firms when investing in solutions. By solutions now, I mean in terms of solutions that can help them better price their services and also manage their time as well. And what should law firms be looking at? Because I believe the practice, the common practice is to look at what other firms are using or what is popular, but what is actually most suited to that particular firm? What metrics should they use in picking a solution if you were to advise as a consultant?
Yeah, I think for me, the starting point is always start with what you have. So before you sort of go down the route of investing in some software or some tech, I think firms, if they're not already doing this, should actually look at the information that they have in terms of who is doing what within the firm. So going back to ground zero and the basics around utilization and realization, how many hours are we billing on these particular matters? How much of that are we actually recovering? Because I think until you understand all of that, you can't then just impose a solution or a technology. Technology is amazing, and there's so much innovation around, but it needs to be tied to behavior. And so if you impose technology on a broken internal process, you're just throwing money away. So, I mean, it may not be the answer that people want in terms of, give us a solution, give us a software. But I think the starting point has to be really going back to basics and really just looking at, what you have. What I see in a number of firms, and I think, it might also be cultural, is that there are firms where there are fee earners that are not necessarily generating fees. Like maybe they're doing a lot of non-chargeable, or the work that they're doing hasn't been properly managed or properly scoped, or they're doing tons of write-offs, and that never gets addressed. That's not being looked at. So I really think that before you sort of go down the route of what should we adopt, you need to understand what the problem is. So what are we doing really well? And what are we not doing so well? Where are the gaps? For me, that would be the starting point. I actually put my video on because I wanted to sort of chime in addition to what David was saying, just about your earlier question in terms of feedback. And it's tied to the question that you've asked me. But I think people underestimate the power of listening. So, in going into, so obviously your clients, whether they are clients that will refer work or clients that will actually instruct you, your clients are just a font of knowledge. And it's not just about going in with a list of questions. I mean, obviously that is a big part of the prep. But I think that as lawyers, we need to understand the skill of listening. And it's something that I didn't fully appreciate until I made that transition from being a full-time fee earner into a full-time business development professional. I actually spent probably 6 to 8 months in my role when I was at Olswang, which is now CMS. and my role was as a client relationship manager. And my sole purpose was to go and listen to clients and hear the things that the lawyers were missing. Because quite often as lawyers, we are very transaction focused, and we may hear the things we want to hear, but there are things that we're missing, and there are questions that we're not asking, either because we're nervous to, or just because it doesn't occur to us. And so, you know, listening in itself is a skill, and I think that's another solution. You know, that's another thing just to be thinking about. So I hope that helps.
Absolutely, absolutely helps. And of course, the actual clients, it's crucial to understand the client's business. Very crucial, not just to go with a generic proposal and hope for the best, but these are key points that and techniques that needs to be understood. And on the back of that, I'd like to draw you back to the comment you made about lawyers not being open to experimentation by virtue of the profession, the very nature of the profession. Lawyers are not known to experiment. Lawyers are expected to know what to do. So from a business side now, what would you advise law firm managers and leaders and managing partners to do today? Because systems and models are changing or have changed. So how would you advise a law firm that seeks to improve its profitability, and also in terms of how their business, the business process within the firm can change or evolve? How would you advise them to start the first move, and most important first steps?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, obviously, I'm not for 1 minute suggesting that people go and experiment on client work. I think let me just put that as a caveat out there. I think giving space for people to test things out where it's not necessarily client facing. So obviously, technology is a gift to us. When I was head of BD at Norton Rose Fulbright, one of the things that I picked up on was that a lot of the young lawyers that were coming through had a really strong tech background. You know, they just naturally, I guess, because they've grown up in a slightly different generation to me, and also just because of all the changes, you know, a lot of them were into coding and that kind of thing. And what we started to see was that by encouraging that as an internal skill, the firm was able to leverage all sorts of different projects where the lawyers, so not necessarily looking at legal matters, but just looking at maybe our internal processes or whatever, were able to use their coding skills to build. And so, you know, that's part of innovation. So it doesn't necessarily have to be stuff that's actually client facing. Maybe you know, as a firm, say to, you know, figure out what it is that, you know, people within the firm are interested in, you know, are engaged in. Obviously, tech is big, social media is big. So I would start with just asking the question, look, young associates, what is it that you think we could do differently? You know, what is it that you think that we can be leveraging that we perhaps aren't? And that can either be vis-a-vis our own internal process, or just in relation to clients. Or so I think there's so much opportunity out there. And obviously, you know, I made that point as a very general point that naturally, as lawyers, we're not necessarily, you know, experimental in that sense. But I do see a lot of change. You know, the fact that we are on LinkedIn and posting and doing that kind of things that maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we just wouldn't have done it. You know, I wouldn't have, certainly as quite a shy, nervous young associate, I just would never have done all of that stuff. So, you know, I think we're being forced to be innovative, and it's a good thing.
Absolutely. It's a good thing. We should all embrace it, of course. And but also, I understand when it comes to innovation, a few firm leaders are wary of just jumping in. And also, it's crucial that associates understand what their role is when it comes to social media, content marketing, and taking responsibility and ownership for the type of content, the language that's put out there. So thank you so much, Cynthia. And of course, I just wanted to state there regarding the fact that it doesn't have to be tied exclusively to solutions that help improve or actions that help improve access to clients. Business processes as well can be improved, and turnaround times can be improved as well with the right investment and investment in tech and also in personnel. And yes, these are techniques that should be looked into. And I truly hope you've been taking notes. There have been a lot of points, important points here. And this is all to help participating firms change things, turn things around, or improve where they are currently implementing some of these techniques and strategies. So I'll move on to Scott now, quickly. I have one question, or two questions for Scott. So Scott, are you still with us?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Fantastic. So excellent session. I truly enjoyed the points that you made regarding digital content marketing and the various formats that are available. And when it comes to effort, I believe it's not about writing or preparing content based on what a particular legal professional wants to write about, but what would actually get the right kind of impact. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there should be an initial research into what would promote the firm or promote a particular practice area or get the right kind of feedback, which is where the firm needs to actively invest in call to actions and what they want to happen from that publication. And not just publications, but converting these thought leadership materials into various digital formats. So my question is, when it comes to the distribution of content, like content that has been prepared, I know that a lot of firms, like lawyers write. So when it comes to the distribution, what would you advise in, what are the quickest or simplest formats to adopt? And what attitude or yes, what attitude should lawyers have when it comes to shorter, more simpler content formats?
Good question. I just want to go back just briefly, because something that's not been mentioned on this conference today is, it's about profitability of law firms. I'm very passionate about education as well. And I want to pick up on a point that Cynthia's just made about the upskilling and data, etc. We've got a whole lot of courses coming out with Liquid Telecom, one of the biggest telecommunications fixed line on the continent, as you probably well know, and that's based around AI and coding. Sits exactly into what Cynthia was just saying, but with the rule of law wrapped around it. So I think it's important for managing partners and for senior partners and management on this call today to really start looking at the future of the law firm. And actually the upskilling of the young associates and giving them many tools as they can to be the best version of themselves, which will inevitably lead to more profitability within the firm. So I think that's something that we should probably pick up on again. In relation to content marketing, I have mentioned it in my very brief presentation, but we all have a habit of over talking, overwriting, and overcomplicating things. Quite simply, with Africa Legal, we keep everything to 500-600 words maximum, because we find that the attention span of the reader is only 4 or 5 minutes maximum. So you have to be very punchy, to the point, concise, and get the message across that you're trying to deliver. And I think if you keep those things in mind, you won't go far wrong. I mentioned it again, no one has time or inclination to read through 20 or 30 pages. You lose the audience. You have to be very, very quick. And in the high paced and high transactional world that we all live in now, everything is delivered very quickly. We consume content quickly and we move on. So that would be my biggest advice to anyone on this call today. Think about the delivery, think about the time, think about the length, and then deploy it.
And if I could build on that, what I also love about that is that If you have something that could be 10 or 15 pages, you can deconstruct it into 5 or 10 different pieces. And because this is a game of constantly staying top of mind with value, then you have the ability to push out more pieces of content rather than one, which people can forget quickly and not read, as Scott is saying, because it's too big.
David, that's a great point. And make it into a series. Make it into a series of events.
Yes.
You know, if you want to be a thought leader, you know, it's the old analogy. Rome wasn't built in a day. When you establish a brand, you've got to be able to plant the seed, and then you've got to continually water that seed so people start realizing, oh, I remember that. So when you're doing the same thing with thought leadership, you can't try and get it all out in one session. You have to take the end user and you have to create the narrative. And that narrative, as David said, may be over a 12-month period to get to the point where you are. But you have to take the end user on that journey. So the next time they see your name or your company brand, they go, I know what they do. They do IT, and those guys are based in Lagos, and I've got a client who wants to do this, so I'm going to get in touch. And that is the best way that we can do it. So I massively agree, David. Sorry.
Yeah. And I mean, I've seen this as a nice technique where you may work with an industry association and they have an internal newsletter. And for you to say, I'm happy to give you content once a month on a series, it just gets your name in there over and over to burn in the fact that you are the authority in that area.
Fantastic points. Fantastic. I particularly agree with the point, the fact that some of this lengthy content can be broken down into episodes. So you can consider formats like podcasts. You can consider formats like short instructional videos on particular topics. And there's so many different digital formats that can be invested in. And excellent points. So I'll go back to Cynthia now. Cynthia, there's a question here that I believe you'll be able to answer from Dr. Ayodele Oni, which goes, is there a direct correlation between the rate of attrition and profitability? And the second part of the question is, should ability to generate revenue be a key condition for being invited to partnership as an associate, or is quality of work more important? So,
Okay.
like to...
I was saying in the chat that I have very strong views on the second part. So let me do that one first. I hadn't actually seen the first question, and these are just my views based on my own experiences in the large law firms here in the UK that I've worked with, and some of the firms that I've worked with across Africa. I feel really strongly that the ability to generate revenue should be a factor. It should be considered. I see too often that lawyers are invited into partnership and they have not prepared or considered any kind of business case as to how they are going to pay for themselves. So what is it that they are bringing to the table? You can be a great lawyer. You can be a great lawyer, but at the end of the day, the legal business is a business. And so for me, if you are being invited into partnership, you have to be able to contribute to the profitability of that business. And that doesn't mean that you will necessarily be generating money on day one. It may take years, and I see this all the time. So one of my roles when I was global head of BD at Norton Rose Fulbright was to work with senior associates who were green lit, i.e. they were on the partnership track, to work with them over a period of a year to build that business case. And we had and lots of firms here in the UK do it, and actually all in the US as well. But, building that business case, looking at who are your clients, what else do you think you can do that others are not doing, or what can you leverage? Which are the new clients, which are the targets or the prospects, but really making it a monetary consideration, I think, is key. I think too often law firms in this jurisdiction, particularly, and across Africa, make an emotional decision about putting people into partnership. They've been here a long time. They're technically sound. They'll be really sad if they don't get made partners. There are other ways that you can elevate someone internally. There are so many different models. There's of counsel. There are different roles, different routes for recognizing someone's ability. But when you have too many people in partnership that are not generating revenue, ultimately that is going to affect your profitability. So I definitely feel very strongly about I don't think it should be the singular factor, but I think it has to be a really important consideration. And we've actually worked with firms in Lagos on their succession planning, on putting together metrics for moving into partnership. I know that there are firms that are doing it and do think about it and do but encourage people, should I say, to put together a business case, because I think it just focuses the mind. So, I definitely think that.
And if I can, I'd like to build on that slightly, which is sometimes in firms, they are not training the younger lawyers to be able to be ready to jump in and to be able to develop business. And so it gets to be a very difficult transition. So to provide skills at the appropriate level for where each younger lawyer is to help them be prepared, that sets the stage. But I totally agree with you, Cynthia. You're kind to say that it should be a factor. I don't go to say it's the factor, but I always like to look at each lawyer as an economic engine in themselves. And they've got to pay for themselves, and they should be. If you're an owner, you have a responsibility. Now, there are the circumstances where you get someone who has a very specific practice. It serves the rest of the firm, and therefore they don't have to be externally marketing themselves, but they also need to be internally marketing themselves. And so I think revenue is a huge factor, all things being equal, that should be looked at.
Sorry, David, I just wanted to jump on your comment there when you said training. We have a growing number of younger lawyers these days in Nigeria and across Africa. Where do you draw the line as training? Because I think personal development is very key. Borrowing the statement from a senior associate at SAN I saw some days, he said, I have come to the realization that personal development is a choice. We can either choose to grow or remain complacent. So where do you train? There's certain things you can't train people for. You can only encourage them. I'm just saying this out for managers out there. They've probably done a lot, and this associates or junior associates are not picking up on it. Where do you cut off?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big question. The short answer in my mind is to provide the skills and provide the opportunities. And like you say, you can't force it inside of people if they don't want it, but there are people who would take it if it was given. And, then of course it has to be delivered well. So if it's boring, if it just doesn't feel right, then people are not going to take it. And then also for finding, in a more subtle way, to find areas of passion. So you might find that certain younger lawyers have interests in certain areas. So I'll just go off slightly, where there was a municipal law firm that I worked with many years ago, and they did a retreat where they were brainstorming about the future. And so they came up with 50 different practice areas that they anticipated were going to be very hot in the future. They narrowed it down to about 8 or 10 practices, and they asked who wants to be part of this. And the people that stood up the most were the mid-level to more senior associate lawyers who really had a tremendous passion for this. And because they cared about it, they cared about pouring their heart into the other elements, which was, how do I go out to the marketplace to get people to know that I care about body cameras or drone law? And so if you could tap into their entrepreneurial side, then you could bring and offer up the other skills that can help them achieve their entrepreneurial goals. It's an interesting cascade of how to play it. But offering up the skills and giving them the opportunities to practice and create peer groups inside where they can talk to each other and brainstorm and go out there and do marketing together. They like being in peer groups, doing things with each other. So how you deliver it can be as important as what you're delivering.
And can I just add to what David has said? I think ensuring that people actually really do understand what marketing and BD is all about. I think sometimes, there's an assumption that, your junior associates or your associates within your organization actually know what you're talking about. In their mind, it might be that when you say market, they think you're saying go win work. So we run a training called Business Development Begins With You. And it's all about getting even a trainee, the lawyer on day one, to understand where he or she sits on that business marketing and business development journey. They may be shy, they may not have people that they feel they can go speak to sort of market their legal services, but that your skill might be writing an article, writing a blog. And so I think there is a real investment that has to be made in ensuring that all our associates, all our juniors that are coming up through the ranks, understand that every single person within a law firm, whether a fee earner or not, has a role to play in marketing and BD, including the receptionist, including the PA. Everybody has a part to play. And I think that's an education that's really necessary.
I just want to add one quick thing about the receptionist. I went into a firm one day and the receptionist was fantastic. And I was having lunch with the managing partner and the head of marketing, and I brought that up. And they said, "Oh, did you see the plaque that is on the top?" I said, "No." And her title was Director of First Impressions. It was just such a beautiful reframe of, yes, these are the people that can set the tone for how people think about you. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. The first point of contact must always leave a lasting good impression on those questions. And we have a few more questions here directed to Mr. Afun. Okay, so I'll just ask the first one here. It's coming from Ebele Iyai, and she's asking, please discuss on additional strategies for back office management.
Hello, thanks very much for that question, Billy. I think everything starts with understanding what you want to achieve. As a law firm, you need to identify which back office you need that for your practice and how they integrate into your practice. And it's also good to have a process as to how they work with you, things like nature, and also have what my practice manager calls a career advancement for them. So if a secretary someone starts to be a secretary, what's the plan for him or her eventually? But it's very, very, very important to have a plan for everything. I think everything is process driven. In this day and age, with what COVID has done for us, is has allowed us to be able to look at our processes and how we can automate same as much as possible. Issues of practice management has been taken care of by IT softwares like Next Counsel and other ones that are coming to the market. Me personally, tracking receivables is very, very important. That software allows us to tracking what we've paid out and what is due from clients is very important. So back office helps with this. Lawyers can focus on what they do best, which is the law, and not so bothered about the management, but it's key for lawyers to also know what it is. In my experience, I learned from a secretary as an intern how to format documents, and till today, my secretaries wonder how I learned it, and that's over 10, 15 years ago. So Tayo, thanks very much. I really appreciate you. Hope that answered your question.
I believe that response is quite helpful. And I would like to ask, okay, so the next question here has to do with mergers. So to simplify it, they're asking if the best approach for a sole proprietorship law practice is to merge. Is that the best approach to increase their profitability?
I mean, I could take a quick stab at that. I mean, I don't know if I have a real answer for that as much as I just look at it from, it could increase profitability depending on what they're going to be able to attract by being in this larger environment. And so if in that environment, they're working with clients that are paying higher rates, then you're going to get your profitability. If you're looking to get work cross-sold to you and you're in a sole proprietorship, then it might be more volume if you just have a lot of open hours that you need getting filled. So it may not be profitability as much as just general revenue. So you really got to take a look at each situation. But all things considered, there are some really nice partnerships that can be created where your services can be offered up to another firm's clients when they do not have your kind of a practice.
I agree with you there, David. Just to add on, I've been involved in a few law firm mergers over the years here in the UK. I think we're going to see more across the continent. There's going to be more alliances. But one of the things I've seen, I would definitely say is, if you're being courted by a larger law firm, you've got to really look at what you've achieved, where your track record has been, what your client base has been, and truly, do you need to have that larger name over the door? It doesn't always lead to profitability. When you see a larger law firm come in, it can look at, there's a revenue you have to pay for that as well. Does that impact on the fee earners? And I've seen a lot of mergers go wrong. I mean, if you look at the South African market, and if you look at the merger and the demerger of Cliff Decker and Cynthia, you know this, in DLA Piper at the time, that was a big mistake. For whatever reason, that was one that went wrong. And it wasn't the right time for people. So I would just be very wary. I'd be very wary about being approached. You're going to be approached all the time. I think that's going to happen more and more as we go forward. And I'd just be very wary about who you decide to merge with. I think, David, you've probably seen this as well in your experience, that it can be a disaster as much as a good thing. And also there's a bit of desperation there with people as well, because there's so much competition for work. So people think the fastest way to do it is to merge with a larger firm entity, and that doesn't always work. Sorry, that's just my two pennies worth.
Well, and building on that slightly, just for a second,
Thank you, Scott.
I've often seen lawyers who will come in, they have a lower fee structure, they go into this larger firm that's asking them to bump up their rates, and then the clients that they've had can't pay those rates. So they've really hurt themselves with that kind of move. Cynthia, I think you were going to add something as well.
No, I agree with both of you gentlemen. I would just say, do your due diligence. In the context of mergers, it's not always just about profit. I mean, I know this is a session about profitability, but I think there is so much more involved in mergers. There's culture to consider. There's legacy to consider. I think in the Nigerian market, consolidation is required. I think there are too many sole operators. That's my honest view. So I do think there is definitely space for more consolidation, and that's something I would love to see. And that's at local level. So I'm not necessarily suggesting that, I'm not talking about international level mergers, but I think, the two lawyers across the street, rather than competing with each other, probably need to join forces. So I think lots of local consolidation would be a good thing. But in terms of mergers more broadly, do your DD, do your due diligence, definitely.
And just to add to what everyone has said, I think whether a sole proprietorship should merge is just like having people coming together to set up a partnership. First and foremost, it's very, very important to know what you want to get out of it. I recommend partnering with someone that has his own book of business, he has his own values, and ultimately how you see the merger will add value to your own practice and for the betterment, also to make profitability. But it's important to know the person you are merging with. It's like a marriage. And so once you're able to get that, I have no issue with it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, for your feedback. They've been so rewarding. And I have one more question. We are almost out of time. And I have just one more question, and feel free to have a go at it. It has to do with marketing. So should we say marketing for law firms, should it be considered an expense? How should law firms view marketing? Should it be considered an expense or an investment? I know this goes without saying, and but I'd like to hear your feedback on how law firms today should view marketing, and how, especially for those who understand how marketing has been viewed in Nigeria as a no-go area. Law practices in Nigeria were wary of certain marketing practices, and it's a lot of them still are. But I believe it is important to put things into the right perspective and look at ways in which law firms can still position themselves and be more visible, and without breaking any of the rules, and stay visible and invest the right kind of funds or money into marketing. So how would you how would you how would you advise law firms to consider marketing?
I'm happy to take a first stab at it. Your question was preloaded that yes, should be seen as an investment. And I think that the insights that you're giving me about how it needs to be positioned, I think it comes back to my earlier comments about you've got to find where the entrepreneurial fire is within the lawyers. And if you can find ways to help them get out in front of the people they want to be in front of, sometimes the words are so important. And so I often in my coaching will say something like, you have a lot of new friends to make. And so where are those friends? What do they do for a living? What is their job and where do they congregate? Well, let's get you there. And we don't want you to ask for business, not at all. We want you to build new collegial relationships, learn, and as was said earlier about, friends and family. You want to start building more business friends and families, so to speak. So you've got to find that level of internal comfort. And as soon as you start to see the lawyer nod and go, oh, I could do that, then you go and build from there.
Thank you, David, for that feedback. Cynthia?
Yeah, definitely. If I can just add to that, I mean, obviously, again, I think the answer is kind of obvious, but it's definitely an investment. One of the things that's really, really satisfying for me as someone who was a legal practitioner that moved into marketing is just seeing that that's now being embraced actually within a number of firms. So I know that sort of 15 years ago when I would come to Lagos and say, I'm a BD person, people would look at me like, what's wrong with this woman? Why would you stop fee earning and go do marketing? But now, when I visit, people have marketing people, they have marketing managers, they have BD managers. So I think there is just an acceptance and an acknowledgement. I was really pleased to hear some of the things that Ade was saying about his firm. And, I just think that's the right way to view it. It is a massive investment. Think about it. If no one knows what you do, so you might be the best technical lawyer on the planet. And I say this to my clients all the time. You might be the best lawyer, but if nobody knows that you're a great lawyer, then what's going to happen? So marketing is central, definitely.
If I could just add to that as well, Cynthia, I think we're all on the same page here. We hear for years, David, the role of a non-fee earner. I just hate those words. I think everyone.
So I said that as well. Yeah. I use that term. Forgive me.
I know, but non-fee earner. I think everyone has a role within the firm. David told us about the receptionist, but BD is often, look, again, going back to what Cynthia was saying before about PEP. Partners want to protect their profits, okay, but then they've got to redistribute those profits to making the law firm fit for future. And I feel that given the fact that clients' expectations and demands are increasing exponentially on all of us, we are in the service industry. So as Cynthia said, unless I know that you've got one of the experts in Lagos in digital technology law, how would I ever find them? So we have to start working on that narrative. And I think we have to, we look at it and say, look, I think the partnerships and those managing partners on here today should really think about, yes, there is a cost to marketing and digital marketing more often now, but the benefits and the ROI are far exceed what you'll be paying now. And I think that's an important part. Every part of that business development marketing is so essential for the future of a law firm.
Absolutely, absolutely. Responses are very rewarding to all our participants. A few questions just came in, and I'd like to take them quickly, or read them out simply to you. The first one, I'd like to start with the second one actually, because it's direct. Civil law countries, what options are there that do not practice rules that can help them compete? I know this is a packed question. If you could answer briefly in the simplest way that you can possibly answer.
Sorry, was that directed at me?
Scott
we lost you a little
and
bit, Ali.
Cynthia?
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so in terms of what options there are for marketing techniques, to be honest, I always think that you need to go back to the practice rules. So whenever I run training, particularly in Kenya and Nigeria, I'm always told we're not allowed to market. And I think that sometimes can be a misreading of the rules. It's about misleading. I think the rules kind of speak to not misleading, but actually you are allowed to put yourself out there. So I like to look at it more in terms of visibility. And I think there's lots, obviously without sort of having a whole nother session on it, I think there are lots that law firms can and have to do to make themselves visible. I think if you go back to the origins of a lot of these practice rules, it was about sort of consumer protection and making sure that there is no miscommunication and that people are not holding themselves out as being something that they're not. So I think that when you are able to just talk about what you're doing, you know, we always say to our clients, a really good starting point just from a marketing perspective is to be on a platform like LinkedIn. You know, obviously we're all, you know, doing digital marketing now, and just say what you're doing. That's not necessarily advertising, or I don't think that's in any contravention with any rules, but saying, you know, really excited that we've just picked up this new corporate M&A deal or whatever it is. So I do think there are lots of techniques, and yeah, I could say more, but I don't kind of want to go on and on. Scott, what do you think?
Cynthia, I agree with you. I think it's definitely a format of Africa Legal, and that's enabled us to kind of bypass any of that work. It's by promoting the individuals within firms and creating that expectation and that understanding. And we've found that since we started all those years ago, that actually the community that we've gathered now, which stands at just over 300,000, is both transparent and collaborative, and that's exactly what we want. So it's all about us just making sure we're aware of promoting ourselves, personal branding, which ultimately results back going into the law firm itself. So I agree with you, everything you've just said.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Cynthia. That question came from Marshall Mapundera. So thank you so much for sending that in. The final question here is addressed to David, and it goes, I would like to get your thoughts on how much financial transparency in the running of a firm can impact the sense of commitment and or influence the drive of lawyers to push earning. So how does financial transparency impact the sense of commitment from lawyers?
You know, I've seen in a lot of firms that sharing some of the financial data is very helpful because, you know, there's that feeling of the big organization, and no matter what the size is, but just the organization and the feeling that, you know, there's always money. And to really get the firm to understand the true operations, the costs, the expenses, what it takes to bring in work, it just creates responsibility. And you know, if this is a fair analogy or not, but it's like teaching your children financial responsibility. And the fact that food and clothing and entertainment shows up at their doorstep when they ask is one thing, but as they get older, to understand what it takes to make that happen gives them a different sense of what it takes to be able to be a contributor to the family. And so I found that there's a certain line that I know some firms don't want to go past. And so that's a whole conversation for people a lot smarter than I am, who have the expertise in that area. But generally, from a cultural point of view, I'm a fan of sharing some knowledge so that people really understand what it takes to run the business.
Thank you so much, David. That question came from Michael Abiba, and I most certainly feel that's a satisfactory feedback to your question. And yes, it still ties back to what David just said. So that will be the final question. I want to thank all of our speakers today for joining us. It's been an absolute honor having you join us today. I understand that you have very busy schedules, and we've gone a bit over the time limit, and we're almost 3 hours in, slightly over 2 hours in. And I'd like to thank you. Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, David. And thank you, Adedoyin, for taking the time to explain these techniques and principles to us. And we definitely will be going back to our various firms and offices and reflecting on all of these techniques and strategies. And they are definitely ones to implement and test out. And of course, we definitely, as we're testing these out, my advice would be to measure as well and to utilize some of the resources that we have within our firms to ensure that we are investing in our marketing and business development. Thank you so much. And Mrs. Harrison, do you have any brief comments before we close the webinar?
Well, just to say a really big thank you. I mean, my notes are brimming over. It's just action time for everyone. It's been most instructive. And I want to say particularly to David, because you're just way across the continent. This is your sleep time. I mean, for Scott and Cynthia, we are all in the same time zone. But for David, oh, wow. This is sleep time for you. Thank you so much. I want to really assure you on behalf of ALAN, the Association of Law Firm Administrators, which we represent, and I believe I speak for the participants also. I see we have really senior lawyers, managing partners, law firm owners in the participant list. I want to say that this time that you have all invested in us, it will not be lost, because it will definitely make a change in this industry. Keep doing what you're doing, and we hope that when we call on you, you will answer. Thank you again. Thank you so much. Over to you, Ali.
Thank you. And you can find more information about the Association of Law Firm Administrators on www.aalanigeria.org. We have information on how you can become a member, how members of your firm can be members of the association. So Alan has various projects, and we'll be announcing upcoming projects very soon, upcoming events and other ways in which you can collaborate with the association. And you have the opportunity of joining some of our various committees as well to be more active in the association. So visit our website and feel free to reach out to any of us. You can find our contact details on the website as well. And thank you, Odun. Odun just shared the ALAN website. So feel free to copy that, click the link, visit our website to learn a bit more about what we do. And also, you might want to take advantage of becoming a member sooner than later to have access to some of the resources that we are going to be sharing from this event and from previous events as well that we've had not long ago. So I want to thank the speakers once again. Thank you, Cynthia Lorraine. You can reach out to Cynthia Lorraine. And she's available on LinkedIn as well. There's a lot of information about LGC Gold, Lorraine Gold Consulting. My apologies. And you can reach out. You can follow her on LinkedIn and also reach out if you took down the details earlier. you can reach out to her as well. Okay, and you can reach out to the people at Africa Legal as well to learn more about their offerings there. And David, thank you so much. David Freeman Consulting Incorporated. Reach out to them to find out the various services that they offer and to learn more. And also, if you joined earlier from the beginning of the session, you probably saw the strategies and techniques he shared. So that's just a tip of some of the things to benefit from staying in touch with David. And also, Adedoyin Afun of Bloomfield Law Practice. Thank you so much for your insightful and rewarding session. It clarified a lot for a lot of our participants as well, I'm sure, who got to learn, got to understand where the journey is from and where we could take things in running a legal business. So thank you so much. Feel free to reach out to all of our speakers. Feel free to reach out to our executives and Mrs. Joy Harrison Abiola. Feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn and for any further information you need about the Association of Law Firm Administrators. Thank you so much. And that concludes the webinar. And I don't know if there are any if you want to open up your video to say hi before we sign out, feel free to do that as well.
David, I think you need to go back to bed.
Okay, David, it's you've been up for too long, David. Thank you so much.
My
Get
pleasure.
some sleep, David.
I've slept for a long time in my life. I can take a break here and there.
Oh, really?
We truly appreciate it. Thank you.
My pleasure. This was a great session. I learned a lot as well. So thank you for inviting me.
It really was.
Okay.
So much.
Thanks, Cynthia.
So much.
Take
Bye,
care.
all.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye, Scott.
Take
Thank
care.
you,
Bye-bye.
Scott.
Thanks,
Bye.
Ali.
Bye, guys.
Bye, David.
So long.
Oh, Cynthia left already. Okay. Hello, Odun.
Bye.
Thank you. Okay, if you're still on, you can find some of the information you need on the chat. I believe there's some valuable information that's been typed in there, so you can check that out as well. Okay, thank you everyone, and certainly enjoy the rest of your day.